So last week I talked about social anxiety disorder and we talked about the criteria for being diagnosed with social anxiety disorder and some of the symptoms. This week I wanted to talk about 4 things that people with social anxiety disorder avoid. As we know, social anxiety disorder affects people's lives significantly. It's marked with a lot of apprehension, uncertainty, fear, and the one that I think is most important is avoidance. People with social anxiety disorder quite often would rather avoid a situation that they feel provokes or causes uncomfortable symptoms of anxiety or social phobia than deal with the uncomfortable symptoms that it creates. 4 things people with social anxiety avoid. Number 1 is pretty obvious. People with social anxiety disorder avoid new people. The idea of meeting new people and potentially being judged by them or evaluated by a new person is really overwhelming for people with social anxiety. Even the slightest comments from a stranger can trigger their deepest insecurities, and it's really hard for them to engage in small talk or a conversation with a new person without them thinking about all of the things that might be being evaluated about them or what that person is thinking about them. They also feel really embarrassed quite often of their social anxiety and want to hide it. So one of the best ways to hide it is to avoid having to meet people and have any kind of those symptoms be visible to a new person, or let kind of the cat out of the bag that they suffer with social phobia or social anxiety. Number 2 is new hobbies. This one might not seem as obvious, but for someone with social anxiety, a new hobby would be really fear-provoking. So especially if it's a group hobby involving something like a gym or doing a performance or some type of having to kind of put themselves out there socially, this would be really anxiety-provoking for someone who suffers with this kind of social phobia. This quite often means if they're invited to do something new or invited to join a group of people in an event or activity, they won't want to go. They quite often won't tell you that it's because they have social anxiety, but if someone consistently doesn't want to join in with a new hobby or with a group of people in activities, it might mean that they do suffer with some degree of social phobia. Number 3 is new places. This doesn't necessarily even have to mean like traveling to new places. That would be absolutely terrifying for someone with social anxiety to be out of their comfort zone in a new country or a place where they didn't speak the language or know anything about that culture. They would feel probably very overwhelmed that they would look silly all the time. But another way that this could be obvious in more of a local setting is if someone doesn't want to go to a new restaurant, say for example a Chinese restaurant, because they're afraid that they won't pronounce things right on the menu, or that they don't want to go to a new grocery store because they don't know where everything is and they don't want to have to walk around and ask new people for information about what's in that grocery store or where to find things. So new places would be really overwhelming for someone with social phobia. They are constantly, like I say, worried about new people and new people judging or observing them. So if they're in an uncomfortable setting in a new place and there's new people, that's like a double whammy for them in terms of their anxiety symptoms and the likelihood of them feeling like they're going to have some symptoms of social anxiety and kind of be outed as a person with an anxiety disorder. And the last one that may also not seem really obvious is new opportunities. So things like going on a date with a new person, or taking a promotion at work, or leaving a job that they didn't like to interview for other jobs. People with social anxiety quite often will stay in situations where they're unhappy that are familiar because they don't want to kind of change things up. They would be absolutely terrified of something like an interview or like going on a date and having to make small talk with a new person. For them, things like new relationships would be very overwhelming. They have a hard time with any kind of criticism or argument because they take that to the absolute extreme of it might be a very simple criticism like, oh, did you put the garbage out? And a person with social anxiety would see that as someone saying, you're an absolute failure, you never can do simple tasks. So social anxiety is a really crippling disorder. I have put together a free course for people who struggle with low self-esteem and social anxiety issues. So I will put the links to that below because I think that would be a great resource for you. Today's video was just kind of highlighting some of the things that people with social anxiety miss out on, and I will be continuing this social anxiety series by talking about ways of coping with it, different ways that social anxiety might be affecting your life. So I hope to see you next week, and please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and check out our Facebook page, You Counseling, for some awesome tips, my blogs, and all of our updates. Have a great week, you guys.